Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service here to present uh, declinations. We're going to look at parallels and contraparallels in particular in this video and out of bounds. And the things that come in through declinations. As you can see, I'm in a different space. I had to move to a quieter room. In doing that, I went through some old material from old conferences that I attended back in the past, and some really awesome subject matters popped out at me, and one of them was this declinations work. And I really thought, how exciting for us to kind of just look at it again. I actually use declinations when I do chart work. I do look at them briefly. It's also part of what I do. But, I do so much that I take it for granted. In this case, I want to bring it up to you. These are techniques that were used by astrologers pre-computer. So astrology was getting really big back in the 60s and the 70s, um, when that's when a lot of astrology books were being written. And there weren't computers. So think about it. The access to computers really just wasn't there. I think it came about in the 80s more, but it was more in the 90s when it really started to shift. A lot of these old techniques are not as relevant, and they should be. I think we should really re-look at them. So with that said, we're going to talk about that today. Before I begin, I want to take a moment for gratitude. I want to say thank you, first of all, for watching this video. But my second thank you is always going to be for my subscribers. So thank you so much for subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It's really helping to build the channel, and I really do appreciate it. Also, the likes, they tell me. And I love hearing from you, so please comment. With that said, thank you for allowing me into your life. Now, I want to look at, first of all, some notes that I have written down for people that might like that kind of thing. So we're going to talk about what is a declination? How do we come up with what we're using as declination? Where did that math come from, if you will? So let's go look at it. So I am looking at a declination sheet, and it's set up per the angle of the sun. Okay, now think about this. We're on an axis, we're tipped a little, and that is what the basis of this form or this technique of astrology lies. Okay, so the angle of the sun is done by using key Earth reference points, and I put Helen Garrett because it was her, and I don't know if you can see it on the little screen, her Declinations book. I'm also going to be looking just for a moment at Lee Weston's book. Again, I got these books probably in the 90s. I'm going to say probably about 97, I think, was on one of them. Okay, so 97, 98, long time ago. The key points of the Earth are the North Pole and the South Pole, also known as Arctica and Antarctica. And they represent these fictitious 90-degree, the number that they give it is 90 degrees N00 or 90 degrees S00, coordinating with the North or the South Pole. Okay. You then have the equator, which falls right in the middle of the circumference. It's right there in the middle. And that would represent to us as astrologers the first day of spring and the first day of fall, or 0 degrees of Aries or 0 degrees of Libra accordingly. Okay? So these are said to be the north and then the south. These are the hemispheres now. We use it in astrology. You would just know it as this, but that's when the change is happening. Then you have Tropic of Cancer. And I mentioned the Anticia charts. That's where they get this from, okay? I know that if you are, and I did read it in one of the books, I'm going to have to go back to it, but it basically was like 20 some degrees of Aquarius is then the Anticia would be 3 degrees of Scorpio. So basically based on daylight, length of day, rays of sun, it is a declination thing. Okay. And there is opposites. Okay. With this. So from the equator, we then go to the where most of the astrology, where the planets are, the circumference that the planets are working from runs pretty much between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. And Tropic of Cancer, daylight wise, is when the sun hits around 23 the 23rd rather, I'm sorry, of July every year, which is the beginning of the sign of Cancer. Okay. And then the opposite point would be the beginning of the sign of Capricorn. And in Antistica, and I'll get to that, it's a completely different video, but just those are the only ones that would ever be in opposition, timing wise. The rest do not work the same way. Okay? That's enough said about that. I'll do that in another video, another short video. I want to keep this one short. So we have our Arctic Circle, which is around the North Pole, and then you have your Antarctic Circle, around the South Pole. Okay. What you also have, because of that Capricorn and Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, which as we already know is where these planets predominantly lie, you have parallels and contraparallels. Okay, so I'm going to get my pen out, or my highlighter rather. And here in the parallel, okay, you're looking at, again, I was writing this down from Helen's book, but honestly, you can go out a full degree. She says 15 minutes of orb. That's a powerful one. I'd say if something's in 15 minutes of, that's a very powerful, because usually when events happen with the contraparallels and the parallels, it is literally within minutes. So I can see why she went that way. But really, a lot of astrologers will use a full degree. Okay. So if they're on, say, both in whatever it is, whether it's the southern or the northern hemisphere, they both have to be there. They both have to be in the north to be in a parallel, or they have to both be in the south to be in a parallel. Okay? So that you want to keep in mind. A contraparallel then is when they are at the same spot but two different hemispheres. So here we go again with, if they're within minutes, they're going to be more powerful. If they are like, but there's this point, like even when it passes over itself, okay? Within orb is always considered about a degree, even in this kind of astrology. Now, if a planet falls outside of, and we'll look and see how those are rated in just a moment. But if it falls outside of 2327, then it is considered out of bounds. And it means what it says. Okay? That the planet is then out of bounds. So take the moon energy, and you think of it being sensitive, well, then it's going to be more sensitive. If you take Venus and you think about all the Venus, the Venetian things, they're going to be more of those. They're going to be more keeper of the peace and kindness and compliments. They're also going to have vanity issues and, possibly even financial ones. So out of bounds is out of bounds. That's what it is. Okay. And then you would stipulate the energy. Like, for example, Virgo out of bounds Venus would be very different than, say, well, I guess it's really Gemini's out of bounds a lot. So you have to look at what signs are different than a Capricorn, which can be out of bounds. So the energies then change it. Okay, they change it. And that's really worth looking at. Here we go again in astrology. Now, some interesting stuff that I learned, because again, I'm going through this material after not going through it for a really long time, and was sort of surprised because I'm going to get a pen for this part. One of the things that it goes through is the idea of northern and southern hemisphere being karmatically part of the karma process. And I thought, I've always been kind of needed this more explained to me, and maybe the reason why, it's something that I got more reading the material now than I did because I took a class and I bought some books, and it was also Zim Zam that there were a lot of questions, but apparently it's if you think about what's in the North Node versus the South Node. Okay, let's start with that, and you think about how karmatically the North Node represents the path to get away from the karma, the path to expand yourself, to evolve. And then south would be what we're coming to let go of, the stuff you brought in with you, so to speak. Okay. Now, if you want, you can go look at a video. I have a video on the nodes, and it explains it in greater detail. That same principle, however, is applied here to the southern hemisphere versus the northern hemisphere, where if something is in the south, it is considered, and in some things it's actually a minus, it is considered something that you brought with you that you're learning to sort out or get rid of or evolve from. I think that's a better way to put it, because I think we're all here to evolve. And that things that are coming from the north, okay, are actually like the North Node. They are, the word I used on another video, because I've done this more than once now, is grace. Our way out, our grace, okay? And so it's really worthwhile looking at whether something is occurring, if the parallel or the contra parallel, of course, you're talking about both. But if you have a combination occurring in the southern hemisphere, it might be something your soul, your life is trying to get you to look at, let go of, move on from. By the same token, anything that's occurring parallel, contra-parallel wise, even aspect wise, I think to some degree, is giving you a way out. It's giving you an opportunity, if you will. So I wanted to go through that because I think that makes it more interesting to look at, and really is some interesting stuff. Now, what I did for us is to bring this to light is I actually want us to look at the eclipses. Okay. Eclipse charts are so important. And I'm so sorry that I did not play that up more when I did this chart. And I'm not going to be doing this chart, obviously, on this video because I've already done one. So if you want to look at the full moon of May 26, 2021, please do so. It is a lunar eclipse. It was such an exciting chart that I forgot to tell you one of the most exciting things. In any event, this also, if you look at that video, you're going to see a repeatable theme because that mercurial chart, which did highlight an ending, obviously, because of that. Actually, no, this one's Allentown, so this was not the chart I did. Sorry about that. But it was in Gemini. It wasn't that far away. For DC, really some real endings going on in Allentown. I don't live there either, so can't really say. But in any event, when you look at this chart for the full moon events, and nothing really changes on declination, so I'm not going to change the chart for this. Okay, if you want to see the chart, I did do it for Washington, D.C., and it does have a Mercury. It is a Mercury ruled chart with Mercury on the rising. Okay, so I just want to say that. That's all I'm going to say. Here today, what we're going to talk about is the fact that Mercury is out of bounds. How about that for there are no coincidences, okay? It is a very mercurial chart, okay? Whether or not you want to look at a chart, some astrologers can read right from here. They don't need to look at the wheel, although I wouldn't see why you wouldn't. But in any event, look at this. Mercury isn't just out of bounds. It's way out of bounds. It's at 24 degrees, 19 minutes. Remember from our paper, 23 degrees, 27 minutes. That's all you get. After that, you're out of bounds. Okay. These are both in the northern hemisphere, both creating not only a conjunction of what they are, which is Venus, which is kindness, communications. Okay. We can look at that communications. We already know that this is a huge communication time. We already know that Gemini is the energy is doing all this. And we know that we're being released from a restricted time period with this virus. Okay. So yes, there are no coincidences. Okay. I think that the other thing that I highlighted in that chart, besides all of that, was the active news concept, of hearing news. That each of us, even on an individual level, there's a lot going on. Not just because now we can get out and about, but there's a lot going on. Now, the other planet that I wanted to look at too is conjuncting it, of course. It's a parallel in this situation. It does happen to conjunct as well, which, you can see from the chart, but 24 to 21 degrees each of Gemini, they are an aspect. In addition, and I do want to stress that, to being parallel, to being out of bounds. What a dynamic this lunar eclipse brings to the chart, because Venus is kindness and goodwill and all things nice. And Gemini is just get out, let's be social, let's be sociable. I haven't seen these people for a while, and let's go talk to this person. And so there's this just love of just being out and about. Okay, which is very Gemini. Okay. And it is a lot with people that we love, because Venus is also out of bounds. Okay, so watch your spending, pretty things. They say the lipstick industry. Wow, what a shock. Nobody's wearing masks. The vanity concept of Venus is going to take over. And, that is interesting how, I'm actually somebody who likes a mask. So, shame on me, whatever. But the amount of people that just don't want to wear a mask, just not to wear a mask, is amazing to me. I, on the other hand, live in an area where the mask is a great solution to the particles in the air. And so I probably won't be giving mine up. Maybe inside and all of that. Yeah, obviously. Or if I'm among friends. But I think that for just running hither and yon, as long as I can wear a mask, I think I'm gonna. But that's personal. Here again, that Venus concept is going to determine whether or not, in a lot of cases, people will want to wear lipstick and not a mask. So there's your Venus. And the other big concern has been money. It's, they really, money is a great motivator, especially for certain ideologies. And I'm going to leave it at that. Not all of us. Again, I don't seem to always follow suit, but I would say in general, there's this real thing about money. And so right now, making money, though, is really important, because it is also part of that. The economy needs to come back, businesses need to come back. I agree with all of that, but I like the fact that Venus is there with this stuff happening, because it's also saying it needs to be fair. It truly needs to be fair. Okay? So that's that. Now, I also want to point out that all planets and asteroids can be out of bounds, especially asteroids. Oh my goodness. Some of them just have the most erratic the movement. Okay. So, I have another report that I actually do that I can see when they are, but I'll be so honest with you that there's so much in the astrology that I do that I don't look at declinations of asteroids as often. It might be the big four or something that might show up in front of me on here. I'll give you an example. It is very possible to have one of the big four out of bounds. None of them are right now. out of bounds. And same thing with the trans-Neptunians. They can go out of bounds. They do go out of bounds, and it is worth looking at. It would depend on what you're doing and how you're spending your time as an astrologer, but it is sometimes really worth a look, even as I'm doing now, and finding these pamphlets and these books and things that I've seen working through some of the astrological seminars and conferences that I've been to. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out, but what I do want to do is just take one moment again. I don't want to keep going on with this, but I do want to look at the next eclipse is a solar eclipse. It does occur on June 10th, 2021. This one I do have done correctly because I don't know why I didn't pull up the right uh, event chart, but that's me. But this one I did. I want to note, and I haven't talked about this one yet, and I will, so I'm not going to talk about it as much on this video. But I do want to point out that it is a chart ruled by the moon. Please make a note of that. Okay, it is ruled by the moon. The moon happens to be in Gemini, shocking, and in the 12th house. I'll talk about that more when I do that one. But what I want to look at right now is I want to look at this analysis, okay? And the very last part of what I want to do is I just want to show you how to read it when it's in a list of aspects. So we'll get to that in a second. But I do want to look at this chart, and the reason why is because though it's 2 weeks later, now Mercury is retrograde because it started to retrograde after that. That was a mercurial chart. And it is no longer out of bounds. Okay? So it's not out of bounds for the solar eclipse. It's tremendously important in the chart of the lunar eclipse. Again, we'll look at that in a minute, but right now I want to just stay with this. But we still have Venus out of bounds, but now Venus has continued to go out of bounds, forward motion and all. And look how Venus is now parallel the sun. The same with Vulcan, but Vulcan's one of those things that I don't have a lot of knowledge of. I mean, I know what it is, and I should do more work, and it might be another subject like the Antisca chart. We might want to do that in another lecture. So there's just so much to astrology that, again, I would hate to see this information lost because this is really cool stuff. Okay. Just like the horary. It's very cool stuff. Okay. So in this chart, okay, I wanted to show the out of bounds. Here we go. I think that's part of spirit. Again, another chart or Arabic parts. It would be like the sums, the math one that I did. Again, another video, but I did one on sums, and that's how, well, the Arabic parts work very much the same way. They're mathematical configurations, just like our formulas. They've just been around a lot longer, a couple thousand years longer. Anyway, one of the things I wanted to look at is we went from having a conjunction, and by the way, these are all occurring, these parallels and these out of bounds are occurring in the northern hemisphere, which, according to what I've read, seems to be the most propelling. Okay, so let's check a look at that. So I'm back, you can tell. Okay, I wanted to look at something. Okay, so just getting back to this, and I just want to stay here for one moment yet. We have, as I said, a northern hemisphere parallel of the moon, the sensitivity, on the security, conjunction of Venus. So this does mean a couple of things. Like, first of all, I know that Memorial Day weekend was a lot of travel, but that was part of the lunar eclipse. I really do believe that in this case, I'm not saying I think it's going to be like a family thing. I do think some people will do staycations, and it might be because of money. And there we go again. So I don't expect people to spend, I did expect them to spend a lot of money over Memorial Day, but I'm not, I think as time goes on, they may spend money to make themselves feel better. So I do take that back. The Venus is with the moon. When Venus is conjunct anything, you do have to be a little bit mindful. Okay. People spending money on loved ones or love life. Okay. So a lot of ways to look at that. It is about making one feel more secure. Finances can do that. But remember that it's with a sociability of Gemini. It's an interaction. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about before I go on any more of my little events here is I want to talk about how to read them. Okay. A couple of things that I want to point out. First of all, you will notice that I even talked about this, the Venus and the moon. Okay. The Venus and the moon. Um, the moon and the sun are in conjunction. The moon and Venus, are in parallel. The moon and the sun are in conjunction. The moon and the sun are also parallel. Okay, you got that, right? But look at this. The moon is conjunct Mercury, not parallel Mercury. It's parallel Venus, but not conjunct Venus. You see that? Remember, I said that to you. I said that that's a conjunction, that parallel, and I probably used that term and I shouldn't. The conjunction of Venus and it shouldn't, I should say the parallel of Venus, here we go again, and the moon, it acts like a conjunction, but they don't have to be in conjunction. And that's what I wanted to show you, even though I said it wrong when I was actually showing it. Some, bear with me. I get kind of crazy when I do these things. So here it shows you, look at Venus and the moon, and you got in it's only 25 minutes away, but there is nothing. Whereas the moon is in conjunction of Mercury. And that's what I was trying to say, I think, is that Mercury is still a player. It's still conjuncting the moon, which is out of bounds. Now the moon is out of bounds, but it's still conjunct Mercury. That's that mental stimulus. Let's be social. Let's commuting, let's go. But it does seem to calm down after the solar return, only insofar as you're still going to run out and go to family, but it'd be the commuting might be day commutes. I don't think the airlines would be as flooded as the roads might be. That's just a theory though, because Mercury is short commuting, where there's a lot more for long commuting. But anyway, let's look at this because this was the other thing I wanted to look at. Okay. So Venus is, we know, in the northern hemisphere, and it is parallel moon in the northern hemisphere. So we know that. We know they're both out. But let's look at some others, okay? I'm really going to have to figure out, hold on a minute here. Let me go back to my chart analysis. Sorry that I'm not using Janice, but I just didn't want to take the time to really learn to get around this quickly. And I can get around pretty quick here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to start looking at some of the minuses. Okay, no, I'm sorry, I was looking at the travel. Here we go. Minuses. Saturn is a minus. Jupiter is in the minus. Okay, they're not in aspect to one another. Juno, the partnership, is in the minus. Do you see where the minus is coming in? That means it's in the south. Okay, you see, are you following me? Here's a contra, well, that's the north and south node. But you see that? We have, here's the north and the south. Okay, so as an astrologer, it would be important to understand where these things are taking place. If they were taking place with Saturn, that would be in the southern hemisphere, unless it would be a contraparallel. Okay, so let's go back. And that's something to take note of. So here you have, it tells you what the the parallels. Now, again, the sun is in the northern hemisphere. So these parallels would be in the northern hemisphere. You'd have to go to Jupiter, aha, where we have nothing. But Saturn, oh, here we go. This is really important. And boy, it's really important to me on a personal level recently. I think a lot of us are having a hard time resolving our structures. It's almost like you're having a hard time in some ways letting go of the past. Though I think in this particular case, it's more structurally oriented. Okay. Astrea, um, think of it as people who have a hard time getting old. Think of it as a hard time for people to follow a structure. You know, it is really these are both in the southern hemisphere, and that would talk about where our karma is right now. And that's one of the things that we can also do with these charts. Okay, see, our sun is in this a plus. Okay, so it's not there. The one of the let me see if it's yeah, that's still a plus. Yeah, it doesn't mean no good. Cupido isn't. So you would look for, and it is Cupido. And this would be like organizations, families, where it's Southern. It's stuff that you came in with. It's Southern. It's stuff that you fall back on. Interestingly, it's also retrograde. It's also at that 3 degrees Capricorn point, which is, that's a whole other lecture. But you have, Cupido in the southern hemisphere. So if you go back to the list and you draw up Cupido, which is our families and our organizations, or am I? Cupido. I thought Cupido. Yeah, it's one of the first ones. Any, here it is. In some ways, people are it's like the individual versus the group. Okay. So there's either the ongoing restriction of that group or there's that breakaway. Okay. But remember that Cupido, and here we have Pluto. So I missed it. Pluto is probably also hanging out in the southern hemisphere, which really makes a lot of sense. Okay. Which is some of the things that we're transforming are things that we're having a really, really hard time letting go of, like racism. Okay. Oh, wow. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Let me come back to you so I can say goodbye properly. So I finally am back in the range of what I want to be with the videos, yoo-hoo. These like short little videos that kind of give you one subject matter. I did not go into depth on the chart because one of the next charts in the next several weeks that I'm going to be doing and scheduling will be the solar eclipse, or the new moon chart, as I would like to refer to it as, of June 10th, 2021. So I'll see you then. Until then, again, please like, share, comment. I'd love to hear from you, particularly comment if you're someone who is really proficient at Janus, and help me become more proficient at it. In the meantime, thank you all for watching this video. And until we meet again, as always, I want to wish you only happy reading.